right, welcome back for another CBSI Hot 10 show. Make sure you go over to comicbookinvest.com and check out the article where I may put a few extra little notes and details that I don't cover here on the show tonight. And while you're here, make sure that you check out all the other shows we have on the channel. Make sure that you let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's Hot 10, just hang up for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back.
Notable sales.
And with our first notable sale, we have an all-time classic. This is the first appearance of The Flash, the unofficial or official beginning of the Silver Age. This is showcase number 4, and it is only a 2.5. That's right, a CGC 2.5. That's kind of my wheelhouse with the older books. Like, I don't mind a well-loved copy. So something low grade like this doesn't scare me off. But this price would, because I still can't afford it where it's at, because this 2.5 hit an all-time high this week in that grade, selling for $15,300. That's right, $15K for a 2.5 for this showcase 4. And a last selling of a 2.5, it was only $10,500. So it almost made $5,000 in 2 years based on appreciation. So that's not bad, and that's a heck of an increase there. So keep an eye on it. Who knows where the top of that book is, because that's going to be, like I said, that's an all-time classic. It's never going to be forgotten or ignored. It's probably just going to keep getting pricier as time goes on. I mean, ebbs and flows, rises and falls, notwithstanding. Long term, it's still just going to be a gainer, I think. But with all that said, we got another one, which is a weird, oddball book that many of you probably aren't aware of, but this Disney incentive, this Disney Hero Squad out of Boom Kids. Back when Boom was doing kids books back in about 2010, there was an incentive for this Disney Hero Squad where there was an Action Comics homage. And yes, you look at the cover, it looks like it's beat up and worn because that's how it was made to look. It even has a coffee ring from a coffee mug placed on it like it's supposedly there. But this is a 9.8 sale for this book. It is a square bound book. It's a little bit thicker. It's almost prestige format. This is a pretty fun book if you can find it. It is pretty tough. I've covered this book once before on Chasing Ghosts, and it is not easy to track down. But somebody had a 9.8 and somebody sold it. Well, it says all-time high. Well, it's the only sale. It was shown as a $3,000 sale, but really it sold for $1,500. So $1,550, which is still an enormous amount for a book like this that has never sold before in any grade or any graded copies, and one that in and of itself you just don't see all that often. It is just one of those. It's a incentive kids book from 15 years ago, so chances of finding one are going to be tough. But I thought it was interesting. I thought it was notable, and thought it was fun to bring up on the show today. Now, before we move on and get into our top 10, I also want to share with you 10% off. If you guys need any supplies, bags, boards, long boxes, short boxes, top loaders for your comics, cards, pages for cards, anything for your graded stuff, BCW's probably got you covered with a product, and you can get yourself 10% off your entire order by using my code RENNA10. So might as well save some money if you got to buy those supplies, and just make sure you use that code. You can use the link that's included down below as well, but definitely use the code RENNA10 and save yourself 10% off. So with that 10% off offer, let's get into the top 10 right after this.
Number 10.
Our first book on the list is a second print incentive. I don't usually like covering these, but usually these haven't been selling. Like lately, there's only been like a couple copies been selling, so there hasn't been much to talk about. I can't call a book hot if there's only 2 or 3 sales. But this week, it's a bit of a change, because by and large, there wasn't a lot of new stuff that was interesting coming out as far as what the incentives and the ratios go. So this Amazing Spider-Man 62 second print by Scotty Young, virgin cover, pretty fun, spraying them with the bug spray. I mean, it's kind of a silly cover. There were about 10 sales, and it's doing well. It's about $45, hitting a high of 55, so doing double ratio right out of the gate isn't too bad considering a decent amount of volume. Like I said, it's only like 10 sales or so far, but it's only been out 2 days. So that is something that I thought was a little bit notable. Granted, on the lower end of things, which is why we're talking about it here at number 10, because as I mentioned, a lot of these second print incentives have only been selling like 2 or 3 copies, and they're selling $35 or so. So this one kind of stands out from the pack as of late, which is why I gave it a spot here at the bottom. But it's not alone. It's not alone this week at the bottom. So let's see what we got in here at our next spot.
Number 9.
Another Marvel incentive second print cover. This time it's a J. Scott Campbell black and white Laura Kinney Wolverine #1. This also was released this week along with, I think, All New Venom #1, but there was only a couple of sales for that. And I think Uncanny X-Men had like a third print, but no incentive. But this 1 in 25 incentive by J. Scott Campbell is doing better than Spidey, which is why it is a spot ahead. Also, same amount of volume thereabouts. It's about 10 sales so far over the last couple of days. I mean, we're talking about books that only came out on Wednesday, and this is only just Friday. So right out of the gate, this thing is averaging a solid $70. No real highs or lows. Like basically every copy sold for right around $70. So that seems to be the market price for it, which again is almost 3 times ratio, which ain't too bad for a book like this. I get it. It's J. Scott Campbell. He has his fans, but this art was available. You can get the regular trade dress to get the art. There's also a 1 in 100 incentive, but this black and white version is the only way to get it here in that incentive on the second print. And folks apparently want to pay for it. So $70 is that marker. Decent number, decent volume again for a second print incentive, which is why it earns a spot here ahead of our last book in at number 9. But with that said, we've got some more stuff for you, so let's see what we got next at number 8.
Number 8.
At number 8, yes, this book was here last week, and it's slipped a couple of spots here, but it's still selling very well, and this is Amazing Spider-Man 194, the first appearance of the Black Cat. Classic Spider-Man issue. Al Milgrom here doing the art. Again, it's a classic book. Many people have this. Many people are still chasing this book, and they want one for their collections before anything officially gets announced for her appearance in movies. As I mentioned last week, she's got a higher profile in the comics. Main star here of the Avengers run that's currently going on. She's back in ASM. Rumors of a movie appearance of some kind in the next Spider-Man movie. Who knows for certain? But what we can say for certain is that volumes are up from last week, where I saw over 35 sales, where last week was around 25. Averages, depending on what the grade of the book, they're all over the place, but it's up. When you take in all the books to account, it's around 250, with those high-end books being CGC 9.6 at $725, and then a signature series 9.6 signed by Milgrom sold for over $1,200. So with that said, things to keep in mind. And was that a 9.8? That might have been a 9.8, but I think it's something just been a 9.6. But regardless, big numbers for this book. It still sells very well. The lower grades still could cost you a decent amount, like over $100. So get what you can. I think there's facsimiles available if you want to go on the cheaper side of things. But for now, this classic ASM book is doing quite well and still hanging on to a spot here on our list. And with that said, let's see what we got in our next spot here.
Number 7.
And in at lucky number 7, we have a book we haven't seen in a long while. This is Earth X number 12. This is the book where we're looking at basically Shalabal being a Silver Surfer here, sharing the duties with her boy, the Silver Surfer. We know by now that Shalabal is going to be the Silver Surfer to start, at least in the MCU, in Fantastic Four First Steps. We haven't seen her yet. We haven't seen what she's going to look like yet in the movie, but I think a lot of people are jumping the gun and getting ahead of things by looking at this book now, considering we just got that trailer ahead of the Super Bowl. We saw another shot of Galactus from the back, so it is only a matter of time before we see that first appearance, that first image of the new Silver Surfer here. So again, a lot of folks going back towards this book. I get it. It's her as a Silver Surfer character. It is in an alternate universe in Earth X, but realistically, it's not her first. You got to go back towards Silver Surfer 1 and stuff. Like, it is what it is. But a lot of people like this book. Alex Ross art. It's got a nice cover, and yeah, with a couple dozen sales so far this week. It's up from last week where only had like half a dozen sales. So, like I said, a lot of people trying to get ahead of things, I think, by picking this up now. Average is still around 30 bucks raw. Highs hitting 40 the past 7 days with a CGC 9.8 selling for 260 bucks. Now, we'll see where this goes. We'll see when we get that first image of the Silver Surfer. But for now, folks are getting ahead of things by picking this up now. With that said, let's keep it going and get our last book in our bottom half of the list at number 6.
Number 6.
Here we have another IDW option property, The Kill Lock. I don't know much about this book. This one was kind of slipped out there following the Dark Spaces news last week. IDW followed that up by saying, "Hey, we've got properties coming on these other books as well." One of them being Brutal Nature and this Kill Lock book as well. Brutal Nature only had a handful of sales this week, so it didn't really move the needle too much. But this Kill Lock book by Livio Ramondelli, it started to get a decent amount of traction as opposed to what we saw with the Brutal Nature book with, again, a couple dozen sales or so, average around 14 bucks here near the end of the week. Start of the week, a lot of cover price type sales, but as the week went on and those cover price books disappeared, we're seeing books more around that $14 range, even hitting a high around $28 for this book. So as far as I know, it's only the one cover, so you got the one cover to look for, and who knows what's going to come of this. Don't know exactly where this property will end up. I think there was rumors of Amazon, but apparently it's going to be optioned, and it's something they're going to be moving forward with, and we'll see what happens down the line. But for now, some people are picking this book up where they can, and many of those cheap sales have gone, so now the prices are starting to tick up, which we find it here at number 6. Now, with that all said, we got the bottom half of the list done. Let's see what we have in our top half now.
Number 5.
Hanging on to the list, dropping a couple of spots, we have, or just one spot, I think, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 1. Again, I was pleasantly surprised by this animated series. I didn't really want to see it. I didn't really have a need for another Spider-Man animated show, but I tell you, they're doing a heck of a job, in my opinion. I'm enjoying it. I like the little twists they're doing with some of the characters, making it feel fresh, making it feel new, but still kind of true to the character of Spidey. I'm enjoying it. With that said, some folks are going back and picking up this particular cover, the cover A. There are 2 other covers that are open order as well as 1 in 25, but they're kind of doing the same. The 1 in 25s are kind of selling for the same amount as this book now, which is averaging about 12 bucks, but hitting highs at 25 this week. Over 80 sold this week, which is up from last week. So the volume's up while the price is only slightly above where it was. I think last week's average was 10 bucks because there are still plenty of cover price sales that sneak out there. Like they'll just hit and they'll clear, and then we still get plenty of these $12, $15, $20 sales here. So it's kind of all over the place right now, as it was last week. It's still kind of uneven. Copies coming out of nowhere for cover, copies selling out of nowhere for 15, 20 bucks. So it is what it is. But with that said, it is a fun show. I recommend you check it out on Disney Plus if you haven't. But as far as where this comic's going to go, I'm not sure. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on here at that number 5 spot. And with that, let's keep it going on to our next book.
Number 4.
At number 4, it just won't go away. This Spawn cover by Mark Spears has been lingering on the list near the top the past couple of weeks. It's dropped a few spots. It was last week's number 1, but I tell you, it's not due to lack of volume because ultimately the volume on this book is up. It's just the price is kind of plateaued a bit. So Spawn 356, that Mark Spears cover, it's a nice cover. It's Spawn. It's open order, so there should be plenty out there, but it's still a book that's getting a decent premium as a lot of folks are picking it up with over 120 sales this past week. 120 sales that I counted off for this book, averaging now about 29 bucks, where last week was around 25. So again, it's only inching up slightly as far as average price goes. Highs around 40, but we're not seeing those cover price sales anymore. Those days appear to be long gone now. Unlike Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, who is still sneaking a cover price, chunk here or there. This is basically the lowest I've seen over the last week. It was around 15 bucks, 20 bucks. So this one has just gotten pricey, and it's still moving in volume, as you can see there with another 120 sold, which is why it's still here on the list, but not high enough to make our top 3. But if you want to see what our top 3 are, don't worry, I got you covered. We're going to look at those right now.
Number 3.
First up, we have the first full appearance of Galactus with him there right on the cover. I know everybody loves I love Fantastic Four 48, but you also need 49, and technically you need 50 as well. You might as well get the triumvirate. You need all 3 issues, really, if you want to be complete on your Galactus story here. But 49 is moving a bit better than 48, so this is what we have here at number 3 as a classic. All-time classic book. One of my favorites, personally. I'm a big Silver Surfer fan. I'm a big Galactus fan. I can't wait to see Galactus on the big screen. Yes, I wanted just Norrin Rad as my Silver Surfer, but I'm fine with whatever they're going to do with Shallabal. We'll see what happens down the line as the MCU grows. But this book, over 20 sales this week. For a book like this, that is not cheap. This is not a cheap book at all. 20 plus sales is a decent jump in volume, considering last week it only had like a handful. So you don't see a lot of volume in a book like this, which is why 20 sales is a decent number that makes me, draws my attention for a list like this, because it's averaging $350 in low grade. We're talking low grade here, and it's getting $350. You can see that high was $460 this week, and that was just for a very good copy. Very good. That's like a 3.5, 4.5. Like, that's all we're talking about here. So, God, if we can get some high grades out there, the price would be even more. As you can see here, CGC 7.5s. I say 5s because 2 of them sold this week for around $1,500 a piece. So that's what we're talking about. That's what we're looking at here for this book. Classic book, Galactus, finally coming in a form we recognize to the big screen. Because remember the last time out, he was just a big purple smoke monster, and I'm glad they decided not to go that route. But with that said, still going to keep an eye on this thing in the weeks and months ahead, because we still haven't gotten a really solid look at him yet. And I got to think we might see some more rises and falls in the months leading up to the movie's release in July? So we'll probably see some more ebbs and flows as time goes on. But for now, with that trailer release, a lot of people are excited. I'm excited, and it's reflecting here in these sales. Now, with that said, we've got 2 books left, and let's get right to them now.
Number 2.
More option news that Hasbro and Legendary are going to be adapting Magic the Gathering into some sort of project, and it's got a lot of folks excited. I'm not a Magic the Gathering guy. I don't know basically anything about how you play that card game. It seems interesting. I just never learned, so I have next to no knowledge of how you play that game. But there is a comic series, and this Shadow Mage #1 was the first comic appearance. I believe it was also polybagged, and there was a card insert as well. Plenty of these out there. Plenty of these sold for cheap and can be found for cheap. But it's also seeing some traction this week with this announcement, because it is the first comic book related to Magic the Gathering that we can kind of point our attention towards as comic collectors. With that said, we've seen a solid 110 plus sales of this book. Again, many of them for cheap. We're talking $2, $3 sales. Cleared out pretty fast. Like those really cheap ones cleared pretty fast. Now we're seeing averages closer to like $10 with a high of $17 so far. And again, this news is only a day or 2 old. So this is a lot of volume and a lot of books moving in a short amount of time. And that price is already starting to creep up. I don't know where it'll cap off, but for now, it is on the uptick, and a CGC 9.8. I think a couple of them sold for 9.8s for around $100. So that's what we're looking at. That's our baseline to start. Where this goes into next week, and as we get more information and more news related to this project, who knows? But for now, we've been reawakened. This was rumored before, but now we're getting more official sounding news. More sales are happening. So as you can see, 110 plus is a pretty big number, again, considering we're talking about the news is only like a day or 2 old. So with that said, we'll see where that one goes at number 2. It is not enough to make our number 1 spot, though. If you want to know what that is, let's just take a look at that one next.
And our number 1.
And our number one book of the week is Fantastic Four, number 209, the first appearance of Herbie the Robot. Yes, we finally got to see Herbie on screen in that newly released Fantastic Four First Steps trailer, and a lot of folks are excited for him and for this movie. We did not get any voice. I know there's been a lot of speculation over who would be doing the voice in the movie, but so far, we don't know who's going to be doing the voice or if there'll be any voice at all. He could just be beep, bopping, and booping for all we know. With that said, folks are still going out and picking up this classic first appearance that is still very, very cheap and very, very affordable for most. Fantastic Four 209. We saw over 80 sales of this book this past week. It's averaging about $20 right now, with a high hitting $69 raw, which is kind of impressive for that high grade. And a CGC 9.8 sold for $340 so far. So a lot of volume, a lot of movement here on this book. Now that we've finally seen Herbie on screen, I think people are more excited for Fantastic Four than you might realize. I know there was a lot of complaints and a lot of talk about, well, Ben Grimm with the CGI, and I think Marco even had a problem with Ben Grimm's voice, but I still think there's a lot of excitement for this movie, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of the top grossers of the summer. So keep an eye on the comics related to it as well, because as of right now, even just the trailer is moving the needle quite a bit. Now, with that all said, that is our list for this week, but please don't go anywhere. Stick around. The boys with the qualified will be starting up next. They're gearing up for Gunn. Looking forward to Superman, which is also dropping in July of this year. So let's see what we got going on the DC side of things. But stick around and check out the boys going live as soon as I'm done here. And while you're here, make sure you check out all the other content on the channel. And I will see you all later with some more content. All right? Bye.